Every generation tends to think that the next one is deteriorating. But psychology suggests that they're not getting worse, they're simply evolving differently. The time and world you're born into not only defines your age, but also shapes the way your brain perceives the world. Let's break down the psychological differences between generations, and you'll begin to understand why people think and behave so uniquely today. The last truth will shatter everything you thought you knew and leave you questioning the very future of humanity. The builders. Baby boomers, often seen as the builders, grew up in an era when the world was rebuilding itself after the war. Their surroundings were filled with stability, progress, family values, and hard work. Psychologically, their brains were conditioned to think, if I put in the effort, I'll find safety. As a result, many boomers highly value loyalty, routine, and respect for authority. This isn't because they're outdated. It's because they were raised in a world where systems made sense. However, as the world began moving faster with new technologies and shifting values, their sense of purpose was rattled. Having spent decades tying their identity to work, retirement or sudden change often feels like a loss of self. Beneath their calm exterior, they often wrestle with questions like, who am I now that I'm not needed the same way? Generation X, the survivors. Gen X, often referred to as the survivors, were the middle children of history. Not old enough to enjoy the stability of the past, but not young enough to fully embrace the digital world either. They witnessed their parents lose jobs, saw an increase in divorces, and learned an important lesson. No one is coming to save you. That's why Gen X became the most self-reliant generation. Psychologically, they developed strong adaptability and emotional resilience. They're skeptical of institutions and trends, having watched too many of them crumble. While boomers focused on building systems, Gen X learned to survive when those systems collapsed. Millennials, the dreamers. Millennials, often called dreamers, were encouraged to dream big, but they grew up watching the world fall apart, facing financial, social, and emotional crises. They came of age during the 2008 financial crash, saw job markets crumble, and were told to just work harder. Psychology calls this expectation trauma, where your brain is conditioned to believe in a fair world, only to be hit with the chaos of reality. This is why millennials often struggle with burnout, imposter syndrome, and a lingering feeling of being behind. However, there's a twist. They're the first generation to seek meaning over money. They don't just want to survive, they want to feel alive. They prioritize purpose, freedom, and self-expression. Yet this freedom also leads to restlessness, as they're constantly searching for something that feels enough. They are the bridge between the old world and the new digital era, and that bridge is often unstable. Generation Z, the hyper-aware Gen Z, the hyper-aware generation, is the first to grow up in a world of constant connection. They didn't discover the internet, they were born into it. This has fundamentally changed the way their brains work. They're wired for speed, trends, notifications, and an overload of information. They can process a lot, but it comes at a cost. Constant mental noise. They are more aware, skeptical, and anxious than previous generations. Growing up with global issues like climate change, war, and inequality, they feel the weight of the world constantly. Their biggest challenge isn't a lack of opportunities, but overstimulation. They know too much, too soon, which leads to a craving for peace, authenticity, and control. They're not overly sensitive, they're overloaded. Psychologists call this digital burnout, where a Generation Alpha, the unknown generation. Alpha is still in the making. They're growing up with AI, short attention spans, and parents who already lived their childhood online. Their world is all about customization. They may have less patience, but more information, less physical freedom, but more virtual control. Their challenge will be figuring out how to feel real in a predominantly digital world. The psychological pattern behind it all. The reality is this: every generation is simply a product of its environment. You're not born different. You're shaped differently by what you experience. Curious about Generation Alpha or other hidden psychological aspects? Drop a comment below for more insights. Don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating psychology content.